Welcome to another edition of Office Hours with. I'm joined, as always, by Scott Elcherson. Scott, hello.
Hello.
And
How's it
this
going, everybody?
and this week we are lucky enough to be joined by Unsplash co-founders Mikael and Stephanie Liverani. Thank you guys for being here.
Hey,
Thanks for
thanks,
having
guys.
us.
Yes.
Thank you.
So we like to start these things off with a nice softball question just to get everybody warmed up and get our viewers acquainted with what's going on. So let's just start with what is Unsplash? How do I use it? How do I access it? How did you land on the name? I think that's a great place to kind of jump into the conversation.
Yeah. I'll start with that. So Unsplash is all high resolution images that you can use for free. And the way the site really came about and the name and everything. So my background was a designer. We'd been making like web pages, and it was really hard finding good photos that you knew that you could use. I'm like, okay, if this is hard for me, it's probably hard for people who aren't making websites, who are just making like presentations and things like this, trying to pull stuff off Google. We've got all these extra images, that we're designing with. Instead of just keeping them in a folder, why don't we just make that public and we'll put it for free? And those one-page websites were called splash pages. And I'm like, since it's always shitty stock photos, we're going to undo that and let's make it a lot better. Fortunately, the domain was available also, so we had unsplash.com. We registered that for $9. The first version of Unsplash was built on a $19 Tumblr theme, and it was made in about 3 hours. So that was the first version of everything that it was, and that was 7 years ago. Wasn't supposed to be a company. Wasn't supposed to be a company.
No? What was it supposed to be? Just like a side project to get better imagery for your designs? Is like that it?
We were running out of money. Go ahead, Steph.
Yeah, no, I was going to say it was actually, I considered it a very happy accident. So we were trying to find just a nice, beautiful page for one of our other companies, which didn't have a great name, by the way. It was like some weird thing that we just found in the dictionary as we were flipping through names. But so we were trying to find a really nice image for that, and then we couldn't. So we just hired a local photographer to shoot custom imagery, and then we had all these extra assets. And since we were really working in the creative community, in that creative space, and in that industry, we decided to just give them up for free and see if people found them useful. And that same day, a lot of people did. I think they were downloaded 30,000 times.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's some good launch day growth.
It was wild to see.
You'll have to share some secrets of that success because we're trying to get 30,000 viewers in on this stream. So whatever tactics you guys use, we definitely need to employ.
We'll just start showing free images here. Maybe that'll.
Yeah, I mean it could, or there's design tips or something like that. Well, and so it started out as this side project in a sense, and then traction pretty much since day one. And now it's been 7 years later, and you've grown to just give us the numbers because they're super impressive. How many downloads are happening a month? How many full images do you have on the site? Just top level, what is the content on here, and what are those metrics that you guys have?
Yeah, so a month ago we were doing about 65 million image downloads a month. So that's people coming and downloading images off the site. We've also got integrations into other creative tools and platforms. So we're built into Medium and BuzzFeed, and that accounts for about half of those image downloads now. But if we look at today, we did our first month of 100 million image downloads in the last month, which is actually more than Shutterstock, Getty, and Adobe Stock combined.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
And that's on a library of about 2 million images, which are all heavily curated. So we see, thousands of images every single day, and then we have an editorial team that goes and makes sure that the content, the library is always high quality and useful imagery.
Okay, and then so you've grown it from little 30,000 download to now we're doing 100,000 downloads.
100 million. 100 million.
100 million. Sorry, yeah, got a few zeros on that one. And then recently, I would say in the past 5 months, you guys launched your brand offering.
Yeah.
So that's what we're super interested in here, right? So what is this brand offering, and how did you arrive at this solution for brands? I assume this is kind of maybe one strategy to help monetize the full business, right? Because knowing that it was just starting with a side project and free photos, at some point you have to make money. So what was the impetus for this launch of this brand offering?
Yeah, it's all started with looking at the market, photography market, creativity market, and where was that headed. And the way we saw it is the supply and demand of it all is just totally changing. So if we look on the supply side, and we'll call that like creation of photos, it's just gotten so much better. You can do stuff on your phone now that you couldn't do on a professional camera when we started Unsplash, and that's only been in this this time frame. And all the most valuable companies in the world are competing on the camera. So they're just improving that. That's getting better and better. So we've got these like basically professional level cameras in our pockets now. And then on the demand side, you've got this huge expansion of all the creative tools. So that's another movement that all the most valuable companies in the world are moving forward. Everyone can create, and they're helping enable that. So if we look at the tools that Apple are building, the tools that Adobe are building, it's really trying to enable people to create easier. You don't have to just be a professional, or be labeled a professional to be able to use creative tools. And there's a whole bunch of independent companies just building all of these great tools that we can all use. So when you see that sort of shift happen, they're like, okay, there's the potential for a new kind of business model to exist that aligns with everything that's going on. And so the way that we saw it is, one of the fundamental building blocks of creating is actually the visual. If we go back to original storytelling, it was even before words. We would write on a wall, and that would be sort of the explanation. Words were kind of this workaround because we couldn't get like visuals to scale and be able to like communicate in that sort of way. But with the internet, that's come back. And now we've got bandwidths that have improved. So you can actually tell these visual stories at mass scale. And so we see, okay, mass scale, what's the opportunity there? How can we keep the site free and accessible as possible to everybody that aligns with our mission? An advertising model where we're actually working with brands who want to be seen in these places, in these different ways. And actually, we look at it like almost like real estate. So Unsplash is more of a real estate company in the terms of where these images all go. And you've got the real estate of the internet, which is becoming visual.
Okay.
So I would say, a lot of people are looking at Unsplash as essentially creating product placement for the internet. So if you think about it that way, it's, if you go back in time, a lot of brands were very protective over the brands. They didn't want people to use the assets. Now, if you fast forward, it's how do I get these assets? There's so much noise in the industry. How do I get people to see this? How do I get people to see what I'm launching, what I'm creating, this new perception shift that I want to get people to see? So let's do it through visuals. And Unsplash is a way that it's not just a centralized platform. It's really a decentralized platform. We can get images seen all across the internet in a way that feels very authentic and useful. So that's essentially, where we're heading.
Right. And so I guess what are those places that these Unsplash images, wind up? Because I know from our end on the lab, we use Unsplash as probably the core tenet of how we build our decks for any presentation that might be out there. So obviously presentations, at least from our end, is a huge point of distribution. But like, what other areas? Like, I know you mentioned Medium and BuzzFeed, but what are those kind of cool, maybe like unique places that people wouldn't think that these images surface that people wouldn't think of?
There's a wide range. So publishing platforms, the Medium, the BuzzFeeds, anywhere from like the Forbes all the way to like Fast Companies. Then obviously CMS builders, so the Squarespaces, the Wixes. We have newsletter builders. We have wallpapers. We have Apple, Tim Cook using Unsplash images in his keynote presentation. There's really billboards, print magazines, just a regular, mom and pop opening up their small business and using it on social. Really, Unsplash images spread everywhere. So if you want to reach a specific audience, we can do that through either our integration partners or through our publication partners, or just through we know the audience of people that are coming to visit unsplash.com.
Right.
Yeah. So, I mean, you mentioned those integration partners and some of those CMS. Is it built directly into the CMS? So, I'm searching for images. I can just go through Unsplash's library directly there and just seamlessly drop it in.
Yeah, it's a native integration directly, and so you don't even have to leave. If you're in Squarespace and you're trying to create a website, you don't have to leave Squarespace. You got it right directly into their builder. And the same thing with Medium or BuzzFeed.
Yep. I found out about the Squarespace one last weekend because I was building a website, and I was like, oh, I had no idea. And then I believe when when we first got connected, you guys mentioned that there was a Medium integration. It was kind of funny because I on Medium, like pretty much once a week when we do kind of like our blogging, and that's where we host our podcast. And I never search for images because I just use our cover art. Then I was like, oh, let me find some images, and boom, there it was. And so I was like, who knew, right? And I was like, these guys are one step ahead on the game. So that's a good background of the whole universe that is Unsplash. And so then, what is the exact brand offering? Let's dive into the nitty gritty. What is it? How do brands work with you to access and kind of tap this potential of Unsplash? And we'll kind of start with that, and then we'll go deep into all the good stuff that we like to talk about on the stream.
Yeah. So the way it works with the brand is you would say, I've got sort of this brand goal of, I want anything that's written around sort of like adventure or freedom. That's really what we sort of identify with as a brand. Or let's say even it's more direct than that. So I'm giving an example of like Harley Davidson. For them, anything that's written about around motorcycles or freedom, adventure, travel, they would love to see an image of Harley, and ideally the right image, something that they actually care about and that fits with the brand. So what they do is that they can take these branded visuals, they'll upload them on Unsplash. They'll have a brand account page. It'll say Harley Davidson. They've got everything. All the images are living there. And then from there, they'll be tagged with different search keywords that are relevant to the images and relevant to the brand goals. They will be promoted at the tops of those searches on unsplash.com and in the searches inside of all of these integrations. So the Medium.
Okay, got it.
So they'll sit inside of all of these places. You turn that on, and it just stays on for a period of time. So however long the brand wants to be running that. And it really just sort of allows you to seed the visuals around all of these topics that matter to you. What we'll typically see for brand campaigns, it'll range anywhere from 100 million to 500 million impressions on these images every 2 months.
Wow.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and then I would say also from a nitty-gritty perspective, we only charge for impressions on unsplash.com. Everything that's in the Unsplash ecosystem, whether it's the buzz, the mediums, and even just the publishing platforms, anyone that's using an Unsplash image and it's out and about on the internet, that's all earned media. So it makes it a very cost-efficient platform from a distribution perspective.
Yeah. Go ahead, Scott.
No, you're right. Go.
No, I was just going to say, from an earned media perspective, that's where a significant amount of the value is being driven anyway. I mean, I used to work as a journalist, so I know finding decent images that pair nicely with your story can be a challenge. So, I think a great example is how Square has leveraged your platform in order to get, drive more awareness around their product offering specifically. And now every time I seem to go read a finance article, it's one of your guys' images front and center. Yeah. So yeah, that earns media perspective is really huge. I know, at least from the client perspective.
And I think what's interesting too is that it's evergreen content, right? So it's not like a social platform where you put up something and then all of a sudden a day later it doesn't exist anymore or no one really remembers it. With Unsplash, the longer it stays up on the platform, the more people are using it to create, and it creates that very unique compounding effect.
Yeah, the average amount of images that a brand will post on Unsplash is like 57 images. So you don't need a ton of images to produce that 100 million, 500 million impressions. Yeah. So the volume and the efficiency is really high.
And then what about, so if I was a brand and I wanted to come work with you guys, but I was nervous about the creative that I have, or I didn't think I had creative that could fit with a platform. Do you supply production? Can we leverage the network of Unsplashed photo photographers that are on there to help create product shots that might be a bit more in the style of Unsplash and that theme of imagery that users expect to find on the platform?
Yeah, there's three options. Go ahead, Steph.
And I was going to say, absolutely. For us, it's a win-win ecosystem. But Mikael, you can explain. Go ahead.
So there's three main options. So either the brands might have them directly, so they've already got images. The other two are actually working with us and our contributors. So they might say, we would like to shoot some new things, and we'd commission the contributors to shoot those. Or we may use existing imagery that's already on Unsplash. And then that would be commissioned as well, just you wouldn't have to shoot anything new. So we've done all of those cases, and about half the time the brands have worked with our contributors. About half the time they've come with existing photography.
All right. So it's flexible. Whatever works best for a brand.
And
Okay.
in terms of working with those contributors, how do you guys, kind of align a brand with one of those contributors in terms of aesthetic? Do you just have a network of 50 that you like to tap into? Is it more on like a brand individual basis where you reach out to people that you think are more fitting for it? How does that work?
Yeah, so we have a community of about 170,000 photographers globally. And so we've curated that into essentially a photo club. It's kind of like an exclusive list that we have behind the scenes. And then depending
VIP,
on
I like that.
VIP, extra curated. But then depending on the demand of the brand, so if they want specific locations, specific styles, experience, those sort of things, then we can tap into that network. And we're always working with the brand along the process. So they're approving the photographers that we're going to go and commission. They're sending us a photo brief. We're working with the photographer on the models and the locations. So all of that is included. And then what's very unique to, I think, the industry is that all of the images that are created, the brand will own full exclusive rights to. So that's in perpetuity. That's globally around the world. There's no strings attached. There's no like licenses with expiration dates on them. So it's really just trying to create something that has no barriers and very great nice content.
I like it. And then what about, I guess the big question here, tracking and like metrics. How and what can we track? Is it only things on the Unsplash site, or knowing that these imagery does get spread across these different platforms and publishers and all that, presentations, like is there a way to kind of understand what that, in a sense, earned reach might be outside of just the Unsplash ecosystem or website, I should say?
Yeah, for sure. So because all of those integration partners are essentially native partners of Unsplash, so it's being pulled through like a technical partnership, we can actually pull, the reach, the downloads, the impressions on those images on a partner basis. So you want to know how many, of your images were seen and downloaded on a medium during the campaign. We can actually provide that as part of the reporting. So that's all offered as well, and it's something that we can do because we have that technical partnership.
Right.
And most of the use cases we see are public publishing. So we're able to just outside of the API, we're able to find things that get created and get published. And I think that's really the unique part of the earned is you can go and see, like Ryan, you were mentioning the finance articles and just always seeing sort of that square image inside of that and seeing that relevancy. And we're able to pull those links and show you all of those.
So in terms of creating a branded collection on one of these brand pages, what kind of imagery do you see that kind of performs best? Like environmental shots, close-up product photography, logos, or is it just kind of a mixed bag in terms of what you're seeing users actually gravitate to?
Yeah, it's typically a mixture. Like we've seen things that you would think, oh, that's too, productized, it's too like overt branding. We've seen those do well, and we've seen ones that are more subtle that that do well too. So it's sort of what we typically do with brands is we'll look at a whole library of images that they might submit and have a variance of across those. And so we'll use our sort of systems and understanding of we understand roughly that these are the mechanics that are going to make these visuals work. These would be your top 10%, top 1%. And then there's some iteration that we can do once a campaign is up as well. So there might be some unique findings to your brand specifically, to your photography, and then we're able to do some live iterations on that.
Very cool. The one thing I did want to maybe like pivot into is you recently had an announcement with the United Nations.
Yeah.
And so as like a great recent case study, so what is this partnership with the United Nations? How are they leveraging Unsplash? Like what is their goal? Because I think just kind of talking about this super recent example will kind of help our audience and our brands and our clients just like think about the ways into really leveraging product photography in their marketing set.
Yeah, so the UN, maybe a little over a month ago, put out a call to creatives globally, and they said, we have these key messages, and we need more visuals that can sort of cut through the noise and help people see these messages, and we don't have the in-house resources to do this as fast as we need to do it, given everything that's going on with the virus, how fast it's spreading. So they had actually 17,000 submissions that came in from around the world. But then the next challenge was, how do we get this out? How do we, we had submissions from everywhere, but how do we get people from everywhere to then see them? And so we saw this as an idea. We realized we could probably get 1 billion people to see these images in the next 30 days. So we went and said that this could be possible given where we can make these images spread, given what we're seeing in terms of how people are looking for visuals and the new visual language that's going on. And so we were able to bring these images onto Unsplash with the UN's blessing. And now we sort of created almost like this public service announcement system for the internet, where on Unsplash, you have sort of the featured placements. This is the image, this is the public service announcement. We're trying to push that forward, make sure people are aware of that wherever they are. Unsplash is global, so people in different countries and everyone can become aware of this. And then it's also inside of all these other products, all these other major platforms and publishing places. So you're not just reaching one place. Like when you're advertising on Facebook or Pinterest, whatever, that's the centralized walled garden, you're in there. Unsplash, you are advertising on 1,821 places. Different platforms.
So that's pretty good.
That's some scale.
Yeah. And so I guess I lost my question. I was thinking I'm stuck on 1 billion downloads or whatever in 30 days. That's a lot of downloads. But I mean, you have the scale to make that happen, which is super interesting. And I remember my question. So, So knowing that it is a global platform and we have all these places that we can advertise, I mean, how does the targeting work? Is there a way just to target the U.S. or Europe or down to a DMA level where it's just New York City or New York State if you want to put just corner store deli imagery up there? What is that capability like?
Yeah, on Unsplash.com, you could target by country. So if you want to just reach, US-based folks on Unsplash.com, we can absolutely do that. We don't charge for anything that's going on the distribution side of our partners. So that's all earned media. So we don't do anything on the targeting on that side, but you can target by specific countries on Unsplash.com. However, most of our partners opt not to do that just because someone necessarily is, if I'm Canadian and I'm going to Unsplash.com and I'm actually work for, a US publishing platform and I'm going on Unsplash and using an image, and now what I'm creating is going to be, put in front of a US audience, you don't want to stop that from happening. So most of the time, just because the creator itself is not located in that country, it doesn't mean that what they are creating is not going to be shared in front of, that specific audience.
Right.
Yeah, the main way we do the targeting is we use keywords. So if you focus on the right keywords, you'll eliminate, the waste.
Right. Oh, good to know.
And do you guys kind of guide brands through that process? I mean, I guess if it's so smooth, you just glide through anyway. But so do you guys work with brands to kind of identify what keywords have worked successfully in the past across different verticals, or do you kind of let them bring their ideas to the table and let them have at it?
We do both. Okay. So they'll come and say, here's what we've got, here's what we're working with, and then we'll bring the insights that we have with Unsplash, and then we cross-reference, pollinate those to sort of spit out the end result.
Yeah. And we know also what people are searching for on the platform. So we use those insights to try to guide, which keywords and which related keywords would do the campaign.
It's similar to Google
exactly.
Search, right? Keyword search and all that. So then, by chance, do you get a lot of interest from specifically search teams, knowing that it is very similar to that process that they're already doing, from an interest from a brand level, or do you have conversations more on the brand side and media side of things? Just curious.
It's actually both, yeah, because Unsplash, it fits in many different types of buckets. So there's, we have conversations with PR teams, with brand teams, media, search. So it's kind of just, and then also production because of the whole content side as well. So it kind of pulls budgets through many different types, and it's very efficient in the sense that a lot of our packages, the way we work with brands is a lot of added value. A lot of the content creation is an added value with a lot of the packages that we have. So we can pull, working dollars or non-working dollars and turn them into working dollars, that sort of thing. So it's interesting the type of people that we can tap into and type of teams.
Yeah, and I would say one nuance to the Google trends that we see with Unsplash trends is that things will trend on Unsplash before they trend on Google. And the reason is because the people who are coming to Unsplash, they're looking ahead to create the content that gets surfaced on Google.
Oh, interesting. So they're the trend creators.
Yeah. So you'll see, like Mother's Day is going to take off on Google now. We had Mother's Day take off a month ago because that's when people are creating things around that.
Okay. So to that point, what has the data shown that something like that's coming up on Unsplash that maybe hasn't surfaced in the calendar on the mainstream brand calendar? Because we're always interested in understanding and finding pieces of information that help us kind of define what we call a culture pop. What are those points in time where we see just a lot of different digital conversation pop up, maybe around like a new movie release, a new game release, and like a fashion drop, right? Like these big things that all combine. So we're always looking for new data points to find that. So I'd be curious to understand, what are you starting to see on the trend side of things that could help, inform some planning a few months out?
Yeah, one of the most interesting things that we've seen is travel and adventure searches have rebounded and grown past the pre-lockdown levels.
Okay.
So what that's sort of telling us is potentially people are sort of, and we probably feel all a little bit this, like we want to travel, we want to get out a little bit, and we're just looking, even if it's through our screens, right? Even if there's like a way that we can look at something different, something that reminds us of nature, something that reminds us of a place that we like. To me, that's what that search is saying. It's like we're stuck indoors, but is there a way that I can maybe digitally get my head out somewhere else?
Right.
So we start to see some of those, and that was one that was really interesting to me because we've seen how hard travel has been hit with the full stop down and that sort of thing. But mentally, we're still looking to travel.
Right.
Yeah, and so I think that escapism is especially prevalent these days. And I saw that you actually posted on LinkedIn that you guys used to share, 10 big photos, and that's where people would actually start their day before, diving into the perils of the internet. So I think that that kind of content that, makes us feel warm and fuzzy inside is definitely a welcome escape from the confines of our four walls.
Yeah, and so much of the internet, it always feels like it's just pulling and taking your attention. And I think what we felt when we would send that email, people would breathe and they would reply to the email and say, this is like the yoga studio of the internet. I'm in my inbox. It's like I'm going like this the whole time. And then I reach your email and I just like chill, for like a minute.
The digital oasis.
Yeah.
That's like we're starting to see these things kind of like pop up, all over the place. But that's kind of in podcasts, newsletters. There's a real need for like that type of content that is calming in many different forms. So that's pretty interesting. And so I am curious. Unsplash has a lot of photos out there, and so this might be the hardest question we ask you on the entire stream. What photos do you think are the best, out there? Like, do you have personal favorites? Because I know I have a few favorites that I'd like to share with the stream here. Personally, this one right here.
I like that one.
Right?
I don't think I've seen that one.
That's one of the originals.
This is the most shared podcasting related photo on Unsplash I have ever seen. I mean, it is anything that deals with podcasting. It's this one, and there's one other one that this is the face of podcasting, and it's from Unsplash.
Yeah, that's really powerful.
I remember that. That's one of the early ones, because I remember curating that.
Oh, really? Wow.
Yeah, 2016. Wow.
That's pretty nice.
Can you do all the factual recall around all of the images that you've uploaded to the site?
So we used to, because we would do this manually back in the day. So I used to name every image. So it was like this little Easter egg. So you download it, and then the name would be like something, something weird. But it would kind of like this little personal touch. You a human wrote that. It's not
right.
Yeah. We've tried to bring that back, but there's like a lot of scale right now, and it sort of messes with us being able to do that.
Right. Yeah, that's too funny. But I mean, so I am curious. Like, do you guys keep a list of like the top, or maybe not the top, but like your favorite images that kind of come in through the platform?
I do.
He does. I just love to browse, and I look at everything that's pastel. So anything that's like really cute pastel, like a light pink, like those sort of colors, that's what's on my desktop these days.
That makes sense. The somebody mentioned in the chat here, I honestly thought it'd be a pineapple image. The answer is yes. If you type into Unsplash and you go to @Elchison, you will find my Unsplash page. It is full of pineapples. So by all means, go check that out.
We have a lot of pineapples on Unsplash too.
Really? Like, what's my competition like?
I think we have a photographer that actually focuses just on shooting images of pineapples. Mikael.
That is true. Can I share my screen on this? Does that mess things up?
I have no idea. Let me try.
Yeah, go for it.
Let's see what happens.
Yeah, just try.
How's this look?
Oh, there you go. I see it.
I see it.
Yeah, I can see it too, but no one else is seeing it. I'm trying to bring it in. So
okay. Sorry. So anyway, I have a collection called OMG on my account, and that's kind of where I store a bunch of the faves.
Yeah. Well, for all of our viewers out there that can't see, the images are really nice.
I put the collection name in the chat so people can actually go and find it themselves.
Okay, that's
great.
That's great.
But I mean, this is credit to all the photographers. You know, like Mikael and I and our team, we get to see all these. We get to work with these assets, with these images, in our designs and our creatives, and we feel really lucky. But we are not talented. Him and I are not talented. We have some members of our team that are very talented photographers, but it's not him or I. So I am just really humbled by all the incredible talent that is in the community, and this speaks to all of the 170,000 plus photographers, you know, that are contributing to the site. That's a cool insight.
Yeah, we're like blown away all the time seeing the stuff that is on the site.
Yeah, and so I mean, I'd be curious, like, when you are working with these photographers, like, what are they using the platform as? Is it meant to showcase their work? Is it meant to kind of like drive discovery of their photography services? Like I guess, what is that value that like they are seeing from Unsplash? Because obviously, from the branded side and the media side, as somebody that is always in the need for high quality images, I get it. Like, I'm there all the time. You know, this is how I build decks. But I'm just kind of curious, like, what does the photographer community have to say about the whole solution?
Yeah. So, like, for most, I think it's similar to blogging. Okay. So, you know, when blogging started, it was sort of this way to share ideas. And what I'm seeing with visuals is visuals are basically, they're just the same thing. You're sharing ideas, you're sharing a visual story instead of a written story. Mm-hmm. And how do you get sort of more people to see that story so they can be impacted by it? The way that we saw that is if you remove that licensing restraint, it can go way further. People can share it more. They're going to use it in things. They're going to put it in different things. And what we were seeing too, there wasn't much like holding on to that. Some photographers get contacted to license their imagery, but most do not. And if you do, it's like not a significant amount of money. So if you can use these images to tell stories, to move either something you're doing forward or just do it as art, that's what we see a lot is people who are submitting photography. Most of them consider themselves to be amateurs. 80% of our members, they do something else and they just take photos on the side. And it's also sort of this more like a collective feel too. So people use the site, they download images and like, how can I sort of give back to this? Oh, I could give something to it and help, you know, other people who I've helped by these images. So it sort of just becomes this big collective. Everybody gives a few images and we're all able to create. I got a good image.
Ah, there it is. Okay, so that was the first photo on his list. That's a nice photo.
Yeah, I don't even know how it was shot. I don't even take photos of the Statue of Liberty because I've seen this shot.
It looks like my morning commute on the Staten Island ferry when it's super foggy outside. So maybe it's one of my Staten Island compatriots who shot it. I do want to call out a picture from chat that just as we're talking about, you know, building image libraries on the platform, is there a way that, what are the best practices, for getting users to pick up your imagery? Is it just making sure that adequate tagging, making sure the resolution is super high? Like, what are some of those, key takeaways that you share with the contributors on your platform?
I would say, the resolution, those things are, make sure you have those, because that's how you're getting up on the site. But that's kind of table stakes, right? You've got that. I really feel there's a unique eye that some people have. Like, I probably have seen this view, but I didn't shoot it like this.
Right.
And there's a way, and I think that's the uniqueness of what we see in stories all the time, whether they're visual stories or written stories. Two people. We've seen this with movies too, right? Somebody will tell the same exact story, but James Cameron will tell it one way where we really, really like it, and somebody else might tell it another way and you just don't vibe with it.
Right.
And I think that's the same sort of thing. You bring sort of this unique take to it. It's hard to say, have a playbook to what that really is. But I've found just by looking at images constantly, you start to tune whatever gives you that like emotion, right? Where your eyes go like that. And when you have to choose, like when we were doing, in the beginning of Unsplash, we were doing 10 images every 10 days. So we were having to choose, sometimes there was 1,000 images that week, and I had to cut it to 10.
So it's a hard job.
Yeah.
That's not easy to do.
No. The only way you can do that is you almost rely on your emotions. Like, you just click through these and you're like, which one made my eyes go like that? Which one made me like I could feel my mouth move, or something happened? And you keep narrowing it down, and that actually starts to tune your intuition. And then it's about, cool, you've got sort of this as a canvas. That these are the kinds of things that I think are good, that have taste. And then I can go and shoot those. And I actually feel a lot of people have taste. We see consistently across people, whether they're designers or people who don't think they're designers, people tend to pick out good images that resonate over and over and over again.
And
so,
go ahead.
All right. So this like visual culture, right? I think this whole thing that we kind of talking about, like, falls over some trends that we talk about the lab. This idea of camera as the input, right? This camera is becoming the most powerful camera on the phone that anybody has ever experienced and owned and probably ever will own. Mikael, you brought up that all these social media companies and big tech companies are just iterating on what the camera can do, and this is becoming very like center and focus into how we're going to be living our lives in the future. Then you mix all that together with how then digital creativity is produced, right, all through the phone. And so when you think about this from like a marketing angle, like, how do you see this idea, maybe like a shift back towards visual-based marketing, contextual-based marketing, kind of, we've seen techlash and some, just overall like anxiety around how much maybe targeting could be out there. Like, do you see that this method of just more contextual, more visual-based, marketing is going to be maybe like a new trend that comes back into like the marketing world, in these next few months to years, as we start to understand and our consumers start to wake up to what's going on, from a tracking perspective and all that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I think, the big thing is we needed bandwidth to catch up to a lot of the visual creation and the abilities that have been made in the last like 10 years. And if you look at, print, that was already happening. So there's been that sort of visualization of how images got in. If you looked at the New York Times covers from the beginning all the way till like 2000, you just see it's evolving. It becomes all images. And then sort of that went from print to online. And then the broadbands weren't sort of good enough to support high res. So you had these like little static things. So it's sort of doing that same progression. And now we're sort of in this high res, we can support these sorts of things really well. And if you look at your tweet stream, I would bet there's over 50%, maybe even 80% of the stuff in your stream has some sort of extra media to it than just words. And I think that largely is coming with the broadband support.
Right.
So it all fits in with sort of the future of where that's going. And we know how visuals resonate with people as well.
Yeah, I think also to speak to your question, I think authenticity is important. People are starting to understand, if you're working with, let's say it's an Instagram influencer and it's, they have to put hashtag ad, there's not as much authenticity. Is that person really endorsing the product or are they paid for that? Whereas, with Unsplash, we're not paying people to use the images or to download the images. People want to use it. They're endorsing the image and they want to use it in whatever creative piece of work that they're doing. And so I think there's that authenticity to it that I think people are starting to really appreciate.
Yeah, no, totally.
Yeah.
And Ryan, go for it.
No, I was just gonna talk about that authenticity, and it just kind of lends itself to a more intimate feel. I mean, you alluded to the medium of communication being paintings long ago, and I kind of see Unsplash as the digitized version of the cave paintings of Let's Go, where we're going to be chronicling, the future of our society just, in this format. So I think that there is a really key part in remaining authentic and keeping true to your voice to ensure that, it's chronicled properly. So really interesting.
Yeah. And so I just kind of wanted to kind of like expand on this idea of like visual first medium. And so when you are talking to brands, whether it's Harley Davidson or the United Nations, like how are you positioning them to best perform on the platform? Is it really like looking at brand awareness campaigns? Are you thinking about things that might be a bit deeper down the funnel? Like conversion based, like brand loyalty. Like what are the types of maybe media campaigns that would work best and perform best on the Unsplash platform?
Yeah, I would say the key words that you're listening to where you're going to really see a fit is relevance or perception. So you might have a ton of awareness, but do you have relevance? Are people talking about you in culture in the ways that you want them to be talking about you? That's what relevance to me means. And when you get the right visual building blocks in the hands of all of the influential creators, they tend to do things that will put your brand into relevance. And then what ends up happening is you shift like how people can think about your brand. People can think about you differently based on visuals that they see. And it's almost instant, right? You see a visual and you start to build these associations already. Like, how does that image make me feel? And then what does that sort of represent? Do I have a connection? And it happens really quickly. And that's what's interesting, I think, about the visuals. And then when it's tied to, as Steph was mentioning, an authentic use, you're able to see it in this like big and beautiful format inside of an actual like piece of content that you're already interested in, versus like sitting on the outskirts where that's an ad and people are already starting to ignore that kind of stuff, and it feels way less authentic.
And I think one thing to mention too is that this sort of marketing, it works at scale, right? So it's not going to work if you only have a couple people here and there using the image. That's why a lot of our campaigns are minimum 100 million impressions and more, because it's really a platform that works at scale.
Yeah, so we talk about these opportunities for these brands and media teams, and we'd be remiss if we didn't ask the question with the people listening in. Agility and speed to market are very important. How quickly can you activate with Unsplash? And then ultimately, how much does it cost for something entry level and working with you guys?
Yeah, so in terms of how quick, it really depends if a brand has the content or not. So if they have the content, a week, 2 weeks, it really, it just depends on how quick the feedback process is. So we'll put together, some keyword suggestions, we'll pick the imagery, and then if we get approval, then we're up and ready, and we can be up and ready in a week or two. In terms of if you don't have the content and you want to commission photographers on the site, that's typically about 5 to 6 weeks. To make sure the content's right. We have to commission and make sure the project brief is aligned and all of that stuff. So in terms of that's the durations. And then in terms of getting up in a test campaign, so we have minimums of 50,000. Those are for really small test campaigns, and they typically last about a month just to test it out. Our packages range anywhere from 150,000 to 500,000 per campaign, and you can amortize that over a quarter or over the year, depending on how long you want to sponsor the imagery and stay relevant on the platform.
That's awesome. And then I noticed now you have an editorial page. That's new in the past few weeks, right? Because I'm not going crazy, or has that always been there?
Is that the homepage, or is that the little tabs?
It's the homepage, but it has editorial. Then it has like featured work from home, and then it has COVID-19 and nature. Yep. But that editorial page is new, right?
It may have had a different name at some point. Okay. It may have just said home. But those are interchangeable. Editorial, you can think of it like the front page of the App Store. Right? These are selections made by editorial team they're showing on that first page. And then there's also some algorithmic things that can make images show up there as well, based on dynamics that we're seeing inside of searches, how people are using the images. Mm-hmm. And then the other things on the bar are different topics.
Right. Okay. And so, but like that editorial page, for our listeners, like, when you do run a campaign, it's like you'll show up in this editorial page along with the keyword search.
Absolutely. Yep. You'll show up on the home page, the editorial page, any relevant topics. If you're Microsoft and we have a business and work topic, you'll probably be showing up there if you want to. And then obviously the searches.
Mm-hmm. And then how do you guys pull those category tabs? Is it just based on most popular search results? Is it constantly rotating, or?
It's based on most popular search results, just based on the data that we see. And then we can have contributors that opt in to have or try to, have their images show up in those topics. So we curate those topics as well.
Excellent.
And there'll be trending topics that make it in there as well. So, a topic that has a ton of growth, it might not be in the top 20 yet in terms of search keywords, but it's growing like crazy. That one will start to show up there as well.
Yeah, I was really interested in that COVID-19 channel that kind of popped up. So is that one of those? Obviously, a response to the situation that we're in, but through all of this and like the data that you can see on the platform, like what are you seeing maybe coming out of this? I know we talked a little bit about how that's changing, but is there anything else that like the data has shown that you're thinking about and maybe adding new topics or keywords or content or just larger trends that might be interesting to our marketers to know about?
Yeah, I think some of the big ones are especially around sustainability.
Okay.
That one, there's so much in different categories where you can be more sustainable. So obviously, yes, you can search directly for sustainability and see certain images that represent that, but there's sustainability inside of different categories, right? So there's a more sustainable bottled water, for example. There's a more sustainable of everything. And if you can move that forward and move that conversation forward visually, with a visual language, then people start to associate those things differently. So we work with boxed water, for example, and
boxed water is better.
Yeah, ranking change that perception. Like, why does a water bottle in every image have to be a plastic water bottle? What if it wasn't? And then you just start to change, and that becomes a sort of a new zeitgeist.
Yeah, Mikael, I would also speak about the at-home movement. We're seeing a lot of searches, not just necessarily working from home, but working out and chilling, or I don't know, whatever type of thing people are doing at home now. But that whole movement, we're seeing a lot of searches there. And so we're a beauty company, and it's all about DIY makeup. Let's have like fun Friday nights where you're on FaceTime with your friends, but you guys are still at home and you still have makeup going on and that sort of thing. So it's the whole at-home movement that we are seeing quite a bit right now.
Yeah, like the visual, it's a whole visual shift, because any visual showing someone, working out in a gym or someone at a hair salon, you're just not doing that anymore. So it doesn't resonate. It's almost like it doesn't exist. You need a new set of visuals to communicate this sort of at home. That's an opportunity also for everybody. It's like, okay, you can start to tell this new visual language. Let's start to talk about what, it's really like now that all of these things are at home. What does that look like?
Yeah, absolutely. I love just, really like thinking about like the platform and the solution, right, as like a way to, insert yourself as a brand visually into like that like cultural, mainstream conversation.
Yeah.
You're actually like you're getting in front of this creator audience that is in a sense building this trend that we'll see pop on Google, 30 days afterwards. And it's just a really interesting way to point to kind of drive relevancy and change perception. I just love the example of Square. It's like any finance related news article, conversation, deck. It's like their imagery and their POS system and all that is smack dab in the center of all of it too. So I think it's just like a great way to, for brands is to think about, if they are maybe even going through like a branding shift, right? Like here's a great way to kind of see that natively into a visual, first marketing channel, which is great.
Yeah, that's right.
So we talked about these shifts in behavior at home as a result of the current climate. What have you guys been doing to fight boredom? How do you keep it busy during these days?
Well, we have a 9-month, we're married. I don't know if we mentioned that, but we have a 9-month-old daughter, so I am never bored these days. Yeah, and I think it's pretty much that she's going through separation anxiety now, so she always wants to be with mom. So I think maybe Mikael, you're trying to find some ways to keep yourself busy because.
We have a dog too, so
yeah.
I kind of take care of the dog. I've become.
We're cooking more. So that's good.
But yeah, I really, you're right, Steph. Like the baby.
The baby is
I think
99%.
a lot of parents feel that, like there's no free time. It's just filled with child time.
Yeah,
and it's not all bad,
I would say that's probably awesome, right? That's probably exactly what you want it to be like. You don't have to go anywhere; you're just in the house.
Yeah. And I was talking to Steph, like the challenge is the volume, right? It's like the amount of time that you're trying to hang out with her. She can go way longer. and that's like I think the biggest challenge. So. Yeah, when you're with your kid for a couple hours, that's good. But like when it starts to become 4, 5, 6, and you're getting tired, I think that's been the more challenging part.
She's also walking now, so she's been an early walker. So you kind of have to just follow her around the house because she just tumbles over, gets up again, and hits her head on the cupboard, and gets up again. So it's a lot of us just looking down, at her this whole time.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, well, that's super exciting. Out of curiosity, did you name her like a serial number, like Elon Musk, or did you use letters? I don't know anymore. Like, I'm trying to figure out, what's the trend going forward? Like you guys tell me.
All right. So her name is Brooklyn.
Oh,
and
it's beautiful.
Reason is it's a marketing reason. So I have a very difficult name to say and spell, and I never wanted that for her because my whole life it was like I had to respond to 4 different versions of my name and misspellings everywhere. So and her name is both we like both long and short. So Brooke and Brooklyn, they both work because you always end up being called the short version of your name too.
Right.
Like people would just call me Mike. So we like both, and they're easy to spell, they're easy to say. And that all fits with, if you're choosing a good domain, it's sort of the same criteria. Like, this is basically her domain for the rest of her life. Let's make sure we like it, that she hopefully will like it, and that, will solve a lot of these other problems.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely a little more generic than your name. Not quite in the Ryan Miller realm in terms of, widespread accessibility, but definitely more mainstream. But your guys' dynamic is super interesting. Like, I don't know how many other co-founders that we know that are both married and also have a kid together. How do you find that, work-life balance throughout the day? You shift on and then, Steph is in the living room with the baby and then you're back off, or like, how do you guys manage?
Yeah, I mean, we've been doing this for 7, 8 years now. I think it's just the norm. I mean, prior to Unsplash, we've always been like 24/7 with each other. It's just the type of personality that I am. I never get tired of him. Oh. And I think also we're just so different in terms of our personality. So Mikael's big picture, loves to think of ideas. I'm more behind the scenes, operational, loves to have a conversation, but less of, the vision kind of thing. So we don't really work on the same sort of things. And I think we just have a really intense amount of respect for one another and for each other's work. So I know that if he's occupied, it's not just because he wants to go and do whatever he wants to do. Like, he's legitimately occupied on something. So I acknowledge that, and I'll take, my turn to take care of Brooklyn and vice versa. So I think that's kind of how we make that work. And then I think we have a lot of help from family too. So that's very ideal.
You guys were saying before the stream, you have a family compound pretty much. Sense it's kind of around the block. So that definitely is pretty great. Well, I know we have about 3 minutes left on the stream, so that brings us into the final 4 question category. These are 4 questions that we always ask every partner on the stream, so that way everybody that's listening kind of knows, what the key facts to activate with Unsplash. So these are the 4 questions. You can answer them in any order you'd like. Feel free to switch it up. The first question is, again, what does it cost? The second question is, what is your size? The third question is, what is the lead time? And the last question is, why you versus a competitor? What makes Unsplash the best compared to another media channel?
Mikael, I'll grab 2, you grab 2. Cool. So small test campaigns start at 50K. Typically, we run campaigns at 150,000 to 500,000. You can extend that over a quarter or over 12 months, however you fit, however you choose. It takes about a week to get a campaign up and running, but about 5 to 6 weeks if you need to commission photographers to shoot custom content.
In terms of our size, we reach 300 million people a month, 188 million in the US, and those people are seeing roughly 18 billion image views a month. And then in terms of why us, to me, it's the only way that you can really impact the visual language around a topic. You can get into that like cultural lexicon and in an organic, authentic way. And you're not showing up in the sidebars, you're not showing up in these weird places, you're showing up where people are actually paying attention.
And the last question was lead time.
Oh, yes. 1 week. Did I not? Okay,
She answered that, Scott.
She did it as a nice clean sentence.
I was that was great. I got the cost. All right, you're right.
It was so good. It just slipped right through. Just so seamless.
I'll say it again. One week if you don't have images, 5 to 6 weeks if you do. Opposite. 1 week if you have images, 5 to 6 weeks if you don't.
Perfect.
Well, any last comments about Unsplash, about marketing, branding, the quarantine that you guys want to end on?
I think first, thanks for setting this up as our first live stream that we've done on Twitch. It's nice to talk to people. Very few people these days. And I think what we're seeing a lot is how creativity can solve a lot of problems, and we're going to keep trying to do that. So hopefully, everybody is doing that. We're seeing people doing great things, and a lot of people are trying to do things. That's sort of just the energy I think that we're feeling in general, and that's cool to see about the whole situation.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I want to thank you guys for your time putting this together. This was really fun.
No, thank
you.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
We love having. Oh, sorry, Scott.
No, I was saying, thank you for not making fun of any of my facial hair. Last week I got totally roasted. I shaved it off, and I'm going clean face for the rest of these things. So
I couldn't even tell, man. The yellow background's a deflection.
See, that's good to know. I'm good for the rest of the conversations.
Well, with that, Mikael, Steph, thank you again so much for joining. Scott, as always, thanks for being here, and to people hanging out in chat. Always love having you hang around. Make sure you're back here at 2 p.m. next Friday, and we'll talk then. So take it easy.